Okay. This afternoon we have a presentation that I think is just super important, and one of the largest. This really covers the area of personal stewardship. One of the largest assets that any of us will have is not going to be our car. It's not going to be our house if we ever have a house. It's going to be our pension. And you've got to learn early and young how to manage your pension and what to do with that. And that begins by learning something about it. And this is, in some ways, we've got such a tool that is given to us, and yet many of us see the urgency of the day and put off planning for tomorrow. And one of the best gifts that you can receive is to learn early in your ministry to plan for tomorrow as well as today. Our General Board of Pension and Health Benefits and the Wespath unit has done an excellent job. It is an institution that has been ranked in the top 15 money management institutions in the world for like a time period of 10 years. And you cannot find anything better than what we have. So I am unashamedly giving an advertisement for that and an encouragement to you to take advantage of it. And today we have a real treat. We have Mark Ciesla, who is a certified financial planner, a chartered financial consultant, and a chartered life underwriter with a long work history as a financial services professional, including work with Ameriprise Financial, TIAA, and Fidelity Investments. And he has worked for a number of years with the ACO Company, which is a Goldman Sachs company, a provider of employee benefits education, presentations, and counseling. He's led seminars, presented benefit changes, held annual enrollment meetings, and all this stuff for Fortune 100 companies that have been contracted for that kind of service. And as of July 17th, we got him at Wespath. So Mark, his current role is as a benefits educator, and Mark works with annual conferences to deliver on-site benefit and retirement education. Thank you for coming here to Oklahoma and for helping us to understand the tools that we've got. And we just appreciate you very much coming and look forward to what you've got to say. Thank you. Friends, this is maybe complicated. If it's overly complicated for you, take a deep breath and figure out there'll be another run at it. Do not give up if you don't understand something. So, Mark, we will hear you gladly. Let's give him an Oklahoma welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It is an honor and a pleasure for me to be here. And I hope to make this interactive as much as possible. I just wanted to let you know that we have Norma and Kate with mics. And so during the presentation, I'm going to pause at certain sections and ask if there's any questions from the group, and we'll try to give you as much information as we can about this sometimes complex subject. For those of you that can't see the screens, I'll invite you, again, as Bishop did, to sit in a seat where you can see the screens, because I'm going to go through some numbers in order to help you to understand the pension benefits. Just to give you an update about Wespath, formerly known as the General Board of Pension and Health Benefits, there are about $22 billion of assets under management. Those are the financial assets behind your defined contribution plans, like your UMPIP or the DC component of the Clergy Retirement Security Program. These are also assets that are in reserve to pay for the current pension benefits for retired clergy. We have about 100,000 participants, and it is still the largest denominational pension fund in the United States. Here's a quick overview of the topics that I'm going to cover in our meeting. And my goal is to finish this meeting by 4 to 4:15 p.m. I'll talk about the provisions for receiving benefits. We'll go over the different plans that are in force. I'll talk about what investments with Wespath, tax situations, and the resources that are available to help you with your retirement planning. When you think about any retirement or pension plan, there are certain times that trigger your eligibility to receive benefits. And these are the points in time that allow you to begin your benefits. So the normal retirement age or the full retirement age would be age 65 or 40 years of service. And I'd like to stress the word "or," because it could be one or the other. And once you hit one of these benchmarks, then you are eligible for a full, unreduced retirement benefit. However, some of you may want to retire earlier than that, and so another point would be early retirement, which is age 62 or 30 years of service. And again, I'd like to stress that word "or." There's mandatory retirement at 72, and there's a 20-year retirement for those who may have served as a clergy person and then left to do something else. As long as that person has 20 years of service, they become eligible for benefits. However, those benefits would begin at age 62. I'm going to cover some numbers now that are incorporated in determining your benefit amounts. And one of those numbers is denominational average compensation. So this is looking at the average compensation per conference and then averaging those conference numbers to a national average compensation. And you can see that over time, this number changes, so that last year it was $70,202. This year it's $71,361, and next year it's calculated to be $72,648. You'll see that this number plays into calculating your retirement benefit amounts. And then another number is planned compensation. And when I talk about planned compensation, it is not only your cash salary, but it's also any housing benefit, the amount of any housing benefit. So let's take a look at the retirement plans that are in place now for clergy. Depending upon how far back your service goes, you may be participating in these various different plans. So currently, we have the Clergy Retirement Security Program. Before that, between 1982 and 2006, the plan that was calculating your benefit was the Ministerial Pension Plan. And then even before that, the Pre-82 Plan. So for those of you that have service before 1982, you will receive a benefit from these three different plans for a total of your total pension benefit. And then there's UMPIP, which is the Voluntary Retirement Plan. So let's start with the Clergy Retirement Security Program. This is the current plan in place, and it has two components to it. One is known as a defined benefit component, which is like a traditional pension plan benefit, produces a monthly benefit for the rest of your life. And the other component is a defined contribution component, which is an account balance. Let's see how that monthly benefit is calculated. It's calculated by simply looking at a formula and putting your numbers into that formula. So for service between 2007 and 2013, you can see the formula to calculate the benefit is 1.25% times the DAC at the time of retirement. So if you're retiring in this year, it would be one DAC. If you're retiring next year, it would be a different one. Times your years of credited service between January 1st of 2007 through December 31st of 2013. For those of you full-time, that would be 7 years of full-time service. So if you look at the calculation in the blue to the right of the screen, you can see how the benefit is determined simply by following the formula. $71,361 times the percentage, 1.25%, times the years of service in that period of time is equal to, in this example, $6,244. Divided by 12 months, and the monthly benefit from this formula would be $520 per month. Let's take a look at this formula and how it was revised as of January 1st, 2014. What simply changed was the percentage that's applied in calculating the formula. So instead of 1.25%, it's 1%. And then we take a look at the DAC at the time of retirement, and your years of credited service beginning as of January 1st, 2014, until your retirement date. In this example, we assume the retirement date is June 30th of 2019. So that would be 5.5 years of service for this calculation. Looking at the calculation on the right of the screen, $71,361 times 1% times 5.5 years of service because of a June 30th, 2019 retirement, the annual amount would be $3,925. We divide that by 12 months, and the monthly amount is $327. So let's take a look at the two formulas put together, the two results, to see what the total benefit would be under the Clergy Retirement Security Program. $520 plus $327. The total monthly benefit under this plan is $847. But that's really the starting point, because some other considerations that would affect the monthly benefit amount would be whether or not you would include a surviving spouse, the cost of living adjustment that you would choose, and the reduction for early retirement. For someone that would like to retire at age 63 instead of age 65, that's 2 years before the full retirement age. And the reduction is 0.5% per month under the full retirement age. So in this case, with 2 years early, it would be a 12% reduction. 12% of $847 is $102. So we subtract that from the full benefit amount, and the monthly amount would be $745. One thing to note is that if you choose an early retirement, that amount does not go up at 65. It stays permanently reduced. I mentioned that there are two components under the Clergy Retirement Security Program. The other component is a defined contribution component. And this is the way that it's funded. 2% is automatically going in, 2% of your plan compensation. Now, there could be a third percent going in on your behalf, but that is contingent upon you putting in 1% into UMPIP. So to get that third percent of the match, you have to contribute 1% of UMPIP. And then you would get 3% plus the 1% would be a total of 4%. And you could contribute on a pre-tax, Roth, and or after-tax basis. The defined benefit component, the pension benefit, is paid out as a monthly benefit. But the defined contribution component is an account balance. And these are the distribution options for the account balance. So you could take it out as a full lump sum. Another possibility is a partial lump sum. Or there are cash installments, and there are self-managed, or there's life-stage retirement income. And I'll talk more about those later in the meeting. With the defined contribution balance, at the time of death, the remaining balance goes to a beneficiary and keeps on going to beneficiaries until it's exhausted. However, with that defined benefit component, it covers at most two people, the clergy person and the second annuitant. You don't have to commence this benefit until 70 and a half. So I mentioned in the beginning of the meeting that I would pause just to see if there's any questions, because I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So Norma and Kate have a mic. And if you would just raise your hand, they could bring a mic to you so that you could ask your question. And I would encourage you to ask a question because typically the question that you have on your mind is a question that other people are thinking about as well.
Are we recording this?
Excuse me?
Are we recording this whole thing? Because I'm too stupid to understand it, but my wife is really smart. So I was going to have her watch what you're talking about. Are we doing that?
What happens is that at the end of this presentation, you'll see a URL, and you'll be able to go to that URL, and you'll be able to get a copy of this presentation.
Very good.
Any other confessions? All right, let's move on then to the ministerial pension plan. For those of you that have service between 1982 and 2006, your benefit was calculated differently than it's currently being calculated. For those of you with service between those years, you currently have an account balance, and you'll see that account balance on your quarterly statement. The purpose or the design of this ministerial pension plan is to provide you with lifetime income and also to provide you with a cash balance. So it's similar in design to the Clergy Retirement Security Program. The account balance is being managed by Life Stage Investment Management, and at age 65 or when you retire, what will happen is that that account balance will be separated into two parts. 65% of that account balance will turn into an annuity, a monthly benefit for the rest of your life, no matter how long you live. The other 35% will remain as an account balance. And when you do retire, for that 65% of your account balance, you'll have to make a decision about what type of payment you want to receive for the rest of your life. And these are the options for a life and survivor situation, typically two spouses. So let's take a look at these example numbers. Life in 100% starts out, in this example, at $1,196 per month. Since it's 100% to the survivor, the amount that's going to go to the survivor after the clergy person's death is the same amount, $1,196. Another choice that's available to you is life in 85%. This is where you'd get more money initially, but the survivor would get less. So with life in 85%, in this example, it's $1,239. And then at the death of the clergy person, the surviving spouse would get 85% of that, or $1,053. And then finally, life in 70%. Receive more initially, but even less to the survivor, $1,284 in this example, $899 to the survivor. So what are some of the considerations in determining which payout option to take? Well, one consideration would be the financial strength or security of that spouse or that second annuitant. For example, if the spouse has accumulated retirement benefits in his or her own right, or perhaps received an inheritance, he or she may not need 100%. And therefore, you'd consider 85% or 70%. However, if the spouse is more financially dependent, then that person, you may want to try life in 100%. So these are the payment options for two annuitants. However, in the case of a single person, there are different payout options. Life only would give you the highest amount, but then that would stop at the clergy person's death, and there would be no benefit to any survivor or beneficiary. Life in 5 years certain would allow some money to go to a beneficiary if the death is within 5 years. So notice with life in 5 years certain, the payment amount goes down a little bit. But if the clergy person dies within 5 years, for the remainder of those 5 years, the beneficiary or survivor would get $1,540 per month, and then it would stop. And finally, life with a 10-year certain, the initial amount is even less. But if the clergy person died within 10 years, then the survivor would get that amount until the 10th year, and then it would stop. If the clergy person lives past 5 or 10 years, it continues to pay the clergy person for the rest of his or her life. And the last decision you'd have to make regarding your defined benefit from the ministerial pension plan would be the cost of living adjustment. And you have a choice between 0, 2, 3, 4, or 5%. With a 0% cost of living adjustment, your payment starts out at a certain dollar amount and stays at that dollar amount for the rest of your life. With the 2, 3, or 4% or 5%, you start out a little bit lower, but then the payment amount goes up by that percentage every year for the rest of your life and for the rest of the survivor's life. Now, just taking a look at the screen, you can see that that level payment, that straight line, represents a 0% cost of living adjustment. And the lowest line at the beginning of the graph would represent a 5% cost of living adjustment. So you can see that with that 5% cost of living adjustment, it starts out lower, but over your lifetimes, it goes up 5% per year. So you consider the initial dollar amount and how inflation is a concern or not a concern to you to determine the amount to get the inflation rate. So here are your decisions for the ministerial pension plan. The 65% is annuitized. That's by plan design. It has to be the 65-35. It can't be 50-50 or 40-60 or any other combination. And then with that 35%, you could take it as a full cash distribution. You could roll it over to UMPIP, and from UMPIP, you have various distribution options. All right, let me pause at this time and ask Norma and Kate to stand to see if there's any questions, either regarding the ministerial pension plan or regarding the clergy retirement security program.
I couldn't tell from your chart, but if one chose like the 5% cost of living, based on the reduction you're going to take initially, how many years would it take to make up the difference from what you're initially forfeiting?
Yeah, an interesting point that people try to consider is the crossover point. Because if you look at the level line on the screen, that would be a 0% cost of living adjustment. And in this particular point, it starts out at about $2,000 a month and stays at $2,000 a month for the rest of the 2 lives. 5%, looking at this screen, starts out at about $1,200. And so there's an $800 reduction per month in this example when you choose the 5% cost of living adjustment. And the crossover point here in this example is age 77. But this is only an example, and you could go to our website and you could produce your own projection and you could determine the crossover point for your particular situation. One of the things, too, is that this cost of living adjustment is not tied to the consumer price index. Our Social Security benefits, any increases are tied to the consumer price index. But if you choose a 5% here, you'll get that 5%, even if the consumer price index is lower or higher. What other questions come to mind?
Got 2. One is, if you talk about 5%, is that a 5% cost of living adjustment each year that a person is retired? And the second is, if you're a part-time pastor, how does this affect? Because I didn't think we had defined benefit as a part-time pastor.
Okay, the answer to the first question is that it is a 5% adjustment each year. And the second question regarding your status as part or full-time, with this ministerial pension plan, you would have accumulated an account balance over your years of service between 1982 and 2006. And so if money was contributed on your behalf, then you would see that on your quarterly statement from Wespath. But if you don't see that, then you were not participating in this particular plan at that time. Any other questions that come to mind? All right, let's move on to the pre-82 plan. For those of you that have service before 1982, we take a look at 2 different calculations, and the result that's higher is the benefit amount that you would receive. We take a look at what we call the past service rate for the conference, and we calculate that against the DBSM for your particular years of service, and you would get the higher of the 2 calculations. In this example, the person has 10 years of service pre-82. The past service rate for the conference for 2019 is $684. So multiplying that out, that's an annual benefit of $6,840, or $570 per month. In this example, this clergy person has a balance of $150,000. And when annuitized, based upon that person's specific numbers, it would be $8,424 per year. Divided by 12 months, it's $702. So the higher of the two results is at $702. So the benefit that's paid initially would be that red line. The lower line, where you see the $570, that's the lesser of the two, so that isn't paid out yet. If the past service record or the past service rate of the conference exceeds the DBSM rate, you'll always get the higher of the two. Now, unlike the other two plans, this plan is paid out according to plan design. So for a single life, it's single life only with no refund. For a married participant, it's life and 75% to the surviving spouse, and that's set by the annual conference. So again, for those of you that have years of service prior to 82, you'll have a result from the pre-82 plan formula, the service between 1982 and 2006, and then the third plan, 2007 and beyond. And you would add those three results together to get your total monthly benefit from Wespath. Are there any questions about those plans before I continue to UMPIP? UMPIP, then, is the voluntary plan through which you can contribute additional dollars beyond those that are being contributed for you. And this is where you can make up the difference if you'd like to have more income in retirement. So this UMPIP, you set the contribution amount, you set the type of contribution, and you determine how it's invested. There are 4 different ways that you can get money into UMPIP. There's before tax, there's after tax, Roth, and there's rollovers. With before tax, that's the traditional way to contribute to this type of plan. Before tax contributions lower your taxable income now. The earnings grow tax deferred. And then when you remove the money in retirement, all of the money comes out as taxable income at that time. You get the tax benefit now, you pay the taxes when you withdraw in retirement. After-tax contributions are deducted after tax. They do not lower your taxable income. But the earnings on these contributions are growing tax deferred. And when you withdraw the money, the after-tax contributions come out income tax-free, but the earnings come out as taxable income. And finally, Roth contributions. When I say Roth contributions, some of you may immediately think Roth IRA contributions. But you have the ability to make Roth contributions into this 403B plan, into this UMPIP. These are after-tax contributions. The earnings grow tax-free. And when you withdraw the money, the contributions and the earnings both come out income tax-free. Roth contribution earnings will come out income tax-free if you meet these 2 conditions. 1, the first Roth contribution was made at least 5 years earlier. And second, you're 59 and a half or older or disabled. Then those earnings on those Roth contributions will come out income tax-free. The IRS sets the contribution limits for these types of employer plans, and for 2019, it's $19,000 for before tax and Roth combined if you're under age 50. But if you're 50 or older, there's a $6,000 catch-up, so you can contribute up to $25,000. The total between employer and employee contributions would be $56,000. You elect your contributions through a form, and when you fill out that form, you can elect them as a percentage or as a dollar amount. Now, if you set it as a dollar amount, it's going to stay the same as the years go by. So if you start out with $100 a month, it's going to stay at $100 a month while your compensation may be going up. But if you set it as a percentage, like at 5%, as your compensation goes up, it'll go up as well by that percentage. And for those of you that may have 401k plans or traditional IRAs, if you want to consolidate into Wespath, you're able to do so. So 401k plans, 403b plans, any government plans or traditional IRAs. So before I continue, are there any questions about those types of contributions? Remember, there's before tax, there's after tax, there's Roth. Anybody have any questions about the differences in those types of contributions? All right, let's move on then. UMPIP access. There's access in service, and these are the points where you could access that money. If you have a rollover in UMPIP, you could access that at any time. If you're active in your service and you turn 59 and a half, you could access it at that point. Otherwise, if you're under 59 and a half and you're active, there's hardship loans and there's hardship withdrawals. A hardship loan is not a taxable event. You borrow from yourself. The cost currently is 7.5%. It's 2% plus prime, but you pay yourself back. It's not a taxable transaction. However, if you want to withdraw the money altogether and not pay it back through a loan, there's hardship withdrawals. Those are subject not only to tax, but a 10% penalty by the IRS under 59 and a half. And with UMPIP, the money that you have in this account, at retirement, you could take a full lump sum, a partial lump sum, or cash installments. Cash installments could either be self-directed, where you tell us how much to send you per month, and we'll send that to you until you tell us otherwise or run out of money. And life stage retirement income is where you have that balance of money, and we determine the amount to send you based upon your life expectancy and your risk tolerance. So it's calculated for you, and any remaining amounts at the time of your death go to a beneficiary. In retirement, when you turn 70 and a half, you have to begin withdrawals according to the IRS, and those are called required minimum distributions. We will calculate those for you and distribute that amount by December of that year. And if you have cash installments and they're less than the required minimum distribution, then we will give you the difference. Any questions about that UMPIP? Because this is the place where you can save more money for your retirement. And you choose the contribution type, the amount, and the investments. I just want to tell you that throughout my financial planning career, when I meet with people on a one-on-one basis, one of the most common comments that I'll hear from people is when they look at their numbers and they think about their cost of living in retirement, one of the most common things I'll hear is, I wish I would have started saving sooner. They'll look at the numbers, they'll realize in some cases they're short of what they need in retirement, and they'll look back with a feeling of regret, thinking, I wish I would have saved more sooner. And so I encourage you, with your futures before you, that to look at your budget and try to save more through this vehicle, the UMPIP. Any questions, again, about the contribution types or about the distribution options?
Mark, if I could just add, the question came up a minute ago about part-time local pastors.
Okay.
If you are less than full-time, your contribution from your church is going into UMPIP. You are not participating in the CRSP plans that were mentioned earlier. All of your funding is in UMPIP.
Thank you. Any other questions or points? A tool that you have available to you through one of our websites, Benefits Access, is called the Retirement Readiness Tool. So you could go to benefitsaccess.org and you could get a sense of how well you're on track for a secure retirement. Once you're in benefitsaccess.org, you'll see a screen like this. And so when you look at the screens here, you can see on the left side is a projection of your retirement income benefits, not only from Wespath, but also from Social Security, if market performance is poor. If you look to the right column, you'll see the same monthly income amounts if your monthly income, if the performance is average. So those bars represent monthly amounts from different retirement plans, including Social Security. If we take a look at this example, we could see that if market performance is poor, the monthly benefits would total $5,958. If market performance is average, they would total $6,463. We've projected, based upon this clergy person's current planned compensation, that this person would need $7,632 per month in retirement. And so you can see there's a shortfall between the need and the monthly income amounts. So how can you adjust things to try to hit that goal? Well, first of all, you could customize your costs. If you look at the sliding bars on the right side of the screen, you'll see a bar for housing costs, you'll see one for healthcare expenses, and one for discretionary expenses. And you could adjust those either lower or higher to adjust your costs in retirement, your projected costs in retirement. Another possibility to address that gap, if you look at the right side of the screen, is there are sliding bars for retirement age, for personal contributions, and investment risk tolerance. So we see that initially they're set at age 65, a contribution rate of 12%, and a moderate investment risk tolerance. And these produce a shortfall between that 7632 and those other numbers. By adjusting the bars, in this example, moving the retirement age to 67, moving the contribution rate to 15%, and then moving the risk tolerance to aggressive, this person meets the target. So I mentioned that the comment that I hear from most people when I meet with them one-on-one in situations is people will make the comment, I wish I would have saved sooner. By using this tool, the Retirement Readiness Tool, at our Benefits Access website, you can see where you stand right now regarding your retirement, and if there's a shortfall, you could begin to take action. A question in the back.
On the slider for housing costs, since we are clergy and most of us live in parsonages that are provided by the church, what's the base assumption there? That we are just paying utilities, or is it assuming that I don't understand how that, should we be raising that more than 5%? How does that work?
Well, what we assume when it comes to your total costs in retirement is that you'll need 85% of your pre-retirement plan compensation. So for example, just to give you a round number, if someone's pre-retirement plan compensation were $100,000, that's salary plus housing allowance, we project that that person would need 85% of that, or $85,000 as a cost of living in retirement. The financial planning guideline is that people need 70 to 85% of their pre-retirement income in retirement. On this tool, we set it at 85% at the upper end, assuming that you will have higher housing costs.
Okay, I think, yeah, it just seems to me like I don't get the housing allowance that you're using as a calculation. I get a physical building to move into and live in. And so when I go into retirement, I'm going to actually have to take that amount of money that I'm not spending now and add it to my retirement costs.
And you make a legitimate point. To fine-tune your situation, this is only a financial planning tool, a general financial planning tool, to help people to get a general understanding of whether or not they're on track for a secure retirement. But I understand your point that you're living in a house now, you'll need additional money to meet those costs in retirement. You could fine-tune your numbers through a comprehensive financial plan with EY. I'm going to talk about the financial planning service that's available to you at no cost, and that's where you could have a one-on-one discussion with an EY financial planner, and you could fine-tune your exact projection and determine whether or not you're on track for your retirement.
Tell us, the DAC, the denominational average compensation, that includes a 25% premium for housing, correct?
Correct. It does. But to address your point about your specific numbers as well, I would encourage you to undertake a comprehensive financial plan with EY. It's no out-of-pocket cost for you. Any other questions?
One of the questions that's being asked is, when you log into Benefits Access, it asks you for a username and password. What do you do if you don't have those?
Okay, if you don't have a username or password, then you initially had logged in or you had created one before. And so what you'll have to do now is call our customer service group, and then they'll reset it for you.
Yeah, I was wondering if a lot of large churches leave the denomination after General Conference. What does that do to the DAC?
Oh, so the question is, what will happen with the DAC after the General Conference? And I guess I could just address that in a broad way, is that Wespath, to its best ability, is trying to project what potential scenarios could come of the General Conference. And we don't have the specific answers because we don't have the specific scenario at this time. But I just want you to know we're trying to anticipate what could happen and discussing it with board members to determine how to proceed based upon the outcome of the General Conference. So that would fall, your question would fall into that group of unknowns at this time.
Have there been projections?
Are there any projections? Not at this time.
There we go. I want to,
please,
may I make this point?
I appreciate it.
When you're talking about the personal UMPIP, there's no effect to churches leaving the denomination. What you're asking about, what is the liability for the annual conference within the overall piece for defined benefit plans? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and my best answer at this time is that, depending upon the outcome of the decisions, that Wespath, would adjust to those with board approval. And I don't know, Bishop, if you have anything to add to that.
Oh, far be it from me to add to anything going to happen in February. I think that is going, well, that's not the only thing. There's several things that impact where are we. And currently our annual conference, as of last year at annual conference, we had a $29 million unfunded liability. And so what will be impacted will be what is the potential unfunded liability going forward. And it's just going to be a problem, an issue that we've got to look at as a church in cohorts with our general agency. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
So my assumption, and probably it's a bad assumption, has been that Wespath and the board and all that determines the formulas you have been setting before us. My question is, can proposals at General Conference change what we are seeing now as what exists?
Yeah, and the answer to that question is yes. You could see in the past there have been changes to the plan design. So there's been the pre-82 plan, there's been the ministerial pension plan, and now there's the clergy retirement security program. And so, based upon the situations in the past, adjustments have been made, and going forward, adjustments may be made as well. So there may be a different design to the retirement plan going forward in the future. Any other questions? So let me briefly talk about investing through Wespath. Unlike a publicly traded mutual fund, Wespath chooses stocks and bonds based upon the business activity. So Wespath funds will avoid businesses involved in certain activities, like weapons, alcoholic beverages, privately run prisons, etc. So these companies, their business values of the United Methodist Church. We have competitive returns based upon the benchmarks. We have low expense ratios for our funds. The expense ratios for our funds range from 0.5% to 0.75%. And we offer you an investment autopilot service, life stage investment management. So these are the 10 funds that are available to you through Wespath. And you could see that they range between a conservative stable value fund and an aggressive international stock fund. And so you have the ability, the choice to invest in any of these 10 funds in any way that you want to. However, one of the most popular ways that people choose is life stage investment management. So for those people that are not self-directed, those people that do not want to choose their own investment options, you can go on autopilot through life stage investment management. And in this case, based upon your age, your benefit commencement date, your risk tolerance, whether or not you opted out of Social Security, and your Wespath benefits, we blend for you those 10 funds according to this criteria. And over time, a portfolio will change. It'll change because some parts of the portfolio underperform, some overperform, and there's dividends. And this life stage investment management automatically rebalances for you. So it's an autopilot approach to investing with those 10 funds. You can choose life stage investment management without customizing your profile, but I would strongly encourage you to go to our website if you use life stage investment management and customize your profile according to your risk tolerance, your benefit commencement date, and whether or not you're eligible for Social Security benefits. You can track our investments and the fund descriptions through our website, wespath.org. You can see the fees for each fund. And on your quarterly statement, you'll see how your accounts are doing. You could also verify your transaction detail, so to double check to make sure that your payroll deduction is going into your account. Any questions on investing in those 10 funds? Let's talk about the housing allowance exclusion. So please, in those maroon folders, the last sheet in your handouts will be a housing allowance exclusion worksheet. While you're active clergy, this housing allowance is taken care of for you by payroll. So there's nothing that you have to do regarding the housing allowance exclusion while you're active. But in retirement, it's a different situation. In retirement, you have to be proactive about the housing allowance exclusion. And simply what this is, looking at the big picture, is that you receive income from Wespath in retirement, and that income is taxable income. The housing allowance exclusion allows you to reduce that amount of taxable income. But you have to be proactive in doing it in retirement, otherwise you're not claiming it. The housing allowance exclusion considers 3 different dollar amounts. One is the amount designated as the housing allowance by the conference, and that amount is 100%. That's a resolution every year. The second amount considered in the exclusion is the amount actually expended for housing. And the third would be the fair rental value of the housing in which you're living. In retirement, you have to calculate these 3 numbers to determine which of these 3 will be the excluded amount against your taxable income from Wespath. So if you look at the worksheet that's in the folder, you can see the 3 amounts that I'm referring to. Number 1 in the middle of the worksheet would be the amount classified as housing allowance by the salary paying unit. And that is the conference, and that would be 100% that's distributed to you by Wespath. Number 2, indicate the amount actually expended by the clergy person on housing. Now, what could those amounts include? Look at A through H of that worksheet. And those would be amounts that would be excluded under number 2. And the third, you can see on the worksheet, indicate the fair rental value of the housing plus the cost of utilities. Where would you get a number like that? You could get it from a local realtor, or you could get it from a website like Zillow or Realtor.com. You have those 3 numbers, and the lowest of the 3 becomes the excluded amount of the taxable income you receive from Wespath. Let's take a look at example A. This retired clergy person in a given year takes out $40,000 from UMPIP as a withdrawal, uses it for whatever. In addition to that, this clergy person receives $1,800 a month from Wespath as pension income. So the taxable amount distributed to this retired clergy person in this particular calendar year was $61,600. Without the housing allowance exclusion, this $61,600 is all taxable and carries down to your adjusted gross income on page 1 of your tax return. But let's consider the 3 amounts to determine the excluded amount. Well, the amount designated is 100% distributed by Wespath in that given year, and it's $61,000. Number 2, the amount spent. So of those items under number 2 of the worksheet, in this example, they add up to $25,000. And number 3, the fair rental value determined by a local realtor or by a website is $24,000. Those are the 3 amounts to consider the ultimate excluded amount, and it's the lowest of the 3. So, of course, the lowest of the 3 is $24,000. $61,600 was distributed as taxable income by Wespath. $24,000 is excludable. So the taxable income for that given year is not $61,600, but it's $37,600. That's a tax savings of $24,000 of income. Keep in mind that the retired clergy person has to be proactive in calculating this. And if he or she is not, it's not taken advantage of. Example B, there are no withdrawals from UMPIP, just the $1,800 a month in pension income. The amount designated, 100%, then is that $21,600. We're going to show the amount spent again as of $25,000 and the fair rental value of $24,000. The lowest of the 3 is $21,600, which was the taxable amount distributed by Wespath. So, looking at the bottom of the screen, the amount subject to tax distributed by Wespath in that particular year is 0. The housing allowance exclusion is available to retired clergy, but not the surviving spouse, unless it's a clergy couple. And on the back of that worksheet, you'll see some language that you would want to submit to the IRS with your return, and probably the worksheet too, to alert the IRS audit person that you are using the housing allowance exclusion per the rules. There's a higher probability that you trigger an audit if you don't provide some justification along with the return. Before I continue to comprehensive protection benefits, are there any questions about the housing allowance exclusion in retirement? The Comprehensive Protection Plan includes death and disability benefits. So these are the death benefits available to active clergy. At your death, the beneficiaries would receive $50,000 from this program. If your spouse were to die first, and you, the clergy person, are the survivor, you would get 20% of the DAC at the time of death. The DAC being $71,361, 20% of that is approximately $14,000. Now, the surviving spouse, that third benefit amount, when does that apply? You, the clergy person, die first. The surviving spouse dies second. At that second death, 15% of the DAC. And if there's a child under 19, at the death of the child, 10% of the DAC. These are the benefit amounts for active clergy. You may be eligible for retiree death benefits if you meet this criteria. If you need help in determining that, you can call our customer service group, and they can help you determine if you're eligible. And if you are, these are the death benefit amounts in retirement. Notice it's not a percentage of DAC, just a fixed amount. Disability, you would receive 70% of your planned compensation, and that's salary plus housing. But that is offset by any Social Security benefits. You submit an application, it must be approved, there's periodic pre-approval, and while you're disabled, you would still receive credit for years of service in your retirement plans. If disabled, you have access to certain retirement plans, 35% of your MPP balance, the DC account of the Clergy Retirement Security Program, and 100% of UMPIP. I would strongly encourage you to make sure that your beneficiary designations are up to date. And you could update those through benefitsaccess.org. Typically, it's the spouse that's the primary, children as the secondary, or perhaps an estate or charity. And know that these beneficiary designations take precedence over your will. You could have gone to an attorney a month ago and produced up-to-date estate planning documents and then die. If the beneficiary designations aren't up to date, the money with Wespath will go with the beneficiary designations, not according to the will. Any questions on the death or the disability benefits? Then let's finish up with the resources that are available to you. This is the homepage of our website. And you can see the tabs at the bottom of the screen. You could go to Benefits Access through the tab. You could go to EY through the tab. And the Benefits Access tool not only has retirement readiness, but there's also a benefits projection tool, there's investment information, and there's beneficiary designations. I mentioned to that one person in the back about EY financial planning. Formerly known as Ernst & Young, the name is now EY, an international accounting, consulting, and financial planning firm. They're available to you at no out-of-pocket cost to help you with your financial planning. They're paid a fee by Wespath, so they give you objective advice, no sales pitch, and you can call them through the toll-free number. They also have a very robust website. Any financial planning topic is fair game for EY. Funding children's or grandchildren's education, which type of contribution is best for you before tax, after tax, and/or Roth, buying a home, developing an estate plan. They're not attorneys, they cannot draw up the documents, but they could give you guidelines. And regarding the toll-free numbers for any of our resources, you see those numbers on the screen, and some reasons you may want to keep your money with Wespath. Autopilot solutions, including Life Stage, comprehensive financial guidance from EY, clergy housing allowance preservation. EY takes the position that if you roll your money out of EY, a church plan, into an IRA, you may lose the housing allowance exclusion on those dollars. Sustainable investment choices, low expenses, and retiree loans. The last slide, an action plan, things you may want to accomplish after attending this meeting. And as I said in the beginning, the URL for a copy of this presentation. Are there any remaining questions about any of the topics that I covered? Well, again, thank you for your attention, and I wish you the best utilizing the resources for your secure retirement planning. Thank you.